Hello, happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. How is everyone doing this fine Tuesday? I am doing great. This is April Showers. Um, this show was scheduled for 11 something. My phone just crashed, so let me get this show started. Let's get this party started. I can't make this stuff up. I cannot make it up. Hello, happy Tuesday afternoon, everybody. Baby, you can't make this stuff up. Now, for us older people and for you younger people, for everybody that's going to be listening to my show and the replay game, first I want you to know Malik Yoba used to play in a great series. What was it? New York Undercover? Then he was on Empire. Malik Yoba has, did confessions on, he likes some of the alphabet people. He finds them, he likes them, which he has his right. Like I said, I don't care. I don't care what anybody does in their bedroom. Just leave the children alone. Leave the kids alone. Leave the kids. Decisions until they're 18. So I can sort of get where Malik Yoba is going. And so without further ado,
None of that shit. What I am is a non-white man. And I think just start calling ourselves non-white. So they're gonna have to figure it out. They'll just say that shit explicitly. No DEI, no BIPOC, no references to black. So we just all walk around like, I'm not a black man, I'm a non-white man. I'm a non-white woman. I'm a non-white, all of us. Asians, Latinos, black people, everybody. Call it what it is. I'm just non-white. And let them rebuke that. Let them refute it. something that just says, we like all non, excuse me, we don't like all non.
Ooh. So I to a point where he's coming from. Okay. So is Malik Yoba is saying, don't put me in no box. Just say I'm non-white, you know. Don't put me in no classification of people. You know, not now. Let me let y'all see something else that's going on. I am a melanated woman. I'm not black. Do y'all know what the color black looks like? I'm not black. I'm a melanated. Okay? But sex, you know, that's I'm a black now. And again, those of Darlene April of the April Showers Network. Hey, who are TMZ? How you doing? So here we go again. They have given another title, and I can't keep up with all of this stuff. And I'm trying to. Because God darn it, I don't know where I come from. I don't know. All slaves didn't come over on ships. All black people did not come from ships, slave ships. So I don't get caught up in the hype of what everybody else wants us to be caught up in. I'm more concerned right now about being respected because you should have respect for other people. I should be respected. My opinion should be respected. If I go to work, just let me do my job. I didn't, all of this black, white, this and that, that's what they do to keep us divided. Now, what I want y'all to see is we have a new term that I didn't even know this was out. Okay. So BIPOC or BIPOC is an acronym that stands for black and, and people of color. It is a more specific alternative to terms like marginalized or minority. BIPOC. It stands for black and indigenous and people of color. It's person's first language. Okay. So if you're black and got Indian in and you're people of color, this is what it is. Now, unfortunately, Malik, Yoba, I have to say this. When the police pull you over, they're not going to look at you as a non-white man. Okay? You are going to be a black man to them. Hey, Tim, again, when the police pulls you over, you're not going to be non-white. So, unfortunately, you know, you want to say, I'm a non-white, but when the police pull you over, when you go to the store, when you go to jail, when you're gonna be a black man. Sorry to bust your bubble. Sorry. Sorry. But it would be nice. It would be very nice. It would be very nice if we could all say, you know, we just non-white. Because baby, when I go to the store, they see a black woman. They're gonna follow around. If I pull out credit cards, you know, some of them gonna look at me because they're gonna think the card was stolen. You know, because this is what has been inbred in people. So, Malik, that was a nice try. I get where you're saying. I get what you're saying, but you know, it's just not gonna. Here's another video for you guys to watch. anyway, back to what I was saying. Bipoc is black, indigenous people, and people of color. So since they say the black people that was here and Indians was here, I guess. Now, what I'm getting ready to show you is I need to understand. So now we got the FBAs. A foundational black American is any person classified as black who can trace their bloodline lineage back to the American system of slavery. Now, I want y'all to understand something. Me, this don't make sense to me. Um, me, I don't care. I'm concerned about the now. I cannot trace nothing back to where I come from. Y'all want to say I'm Indians, find my tribe. Again, I'm going to say some of y'all tribes I don't want to belong to. Yeah, no. So I'm living for the now and how I would like to see people be. That's what I'm living for right now. The here, the right now. I'm looking. Hold on, y'all. Ooh, ooh, hold on. Hold on. Hold on for one moment. Let me show a video.
color.
Hello, everyone. My name is Angie Hambrick. I'm the Associate Vice President of Diversity, Justice, and Sustainability, and the Director for the Center of Gender Equity. And I'm really excited to be here with my three friends and colleagues and former students to talk about the word BIPOC. I'm going to let my dope panel introduce themselves. If you can give folks your name, what you do either at POU or when you graduated POU, and what are you up to now? Go ahead, Nicole, you start.
Me. Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Nicole Giuliano. I'm the director of the Diversity Center. Been at POU since 2012. You, she, her pronouns. What am I up to now? Swimming and all the things. I got a couple pending things like my syllabus and for my Native American Indigenous Studies program, the Reiki Scholar program that thinking through, and yeah, just swimming through opening school and COVID.
Hi everyone, I'm Jacob Taylor Mosquera, or Jakey if you're Angie.
Yes, if you're Angie, like Bandit if you're nasty, yes.
I graduated from PLU in 2009/10. I was in Oaxaca for my last semester, so it got a little, yeah. I'm currently a Spanish teacher up here in Seattle at Seattle Central College and at University Prep. And I'm trying to transition into the public sector. So I'll be starting a program at Seattle University for public administration next month. So yeah, also swimming through co-teaching online and now going to be a student online. And yeah, just navigating, surviving.
So,
all right, so I'm Ami Shah. I also joined PLU in 2012. I'm an associate professor of global studies and anthropology, and I also use she, her, hers pronouns. Now, I mean, like, let's just be honest right now, we're in the middle of a pandemic, life is crazy, I've got two littles, so like, you know, if I get an hour or two of work done, I'm pretty happy. I like have showered today, brushed my hair, like, so life is pretty good today, but it varies a lot. So I'm just keeping it real.
well, you know what? That's what I hope we do this entire time. And that's some real thing. That's some real life right there. So the word that we're going to talk about, or the phrase that we're going to talk about, is BIPOC, which stands for Black, comma, Indigenous, comma, people of color, period. I know the first time I saw it just as BIPOC, I was like, oh, bi people of color, like as in bisexual, as in sexual orientation, and then I like moved on from the article or whatever I was reading, and then I started reading again more in the article in context, and I'm like, oh wait, this means something totally different, and I didn't know that this was a new way to group, identify, categorize people. Like I had no idea. For me, it kind of came out of nowhere. So I'm wondering, for you all, like, when was the first time you heard BIPOC? And what was your understanding? What were your initial thoughts when this new phrase or terminology kind of emerged?
I think I'm with you, Angie. I had no clue, and I also assumed that it was for by people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I think you asked when, I think it was probably 2 years ago that I stumbled upon this. It was actually during a conference in New Orleans, and I saw a space for affinity groups for BIPOC, and I was like, well, I get the POC part, but I'm not bi. I don't identify as bi myself, so I don't have access to that room. So I decided to go to a different workshop. And then it was later that a coworker said, well, we didn't see you in the BIPOC room. And I said, yeah, I'm not bi. And she started laughing. She's like, you need to read more. It just called me out. It was like, you need to read more. Okay, I agreed. But it's like, it's not that. It's Black, Indigenous, people of color. And so, oh, okay. Well, now I know. Thanks for schooling me. I'm still grappling with it and still trying to learn more about the term.
For me, I was pretty certain that it was this summer, like as things around police brutality came out and watching kind of activist feeds use BIPOC, I was stunned and going like, oh no, I've been using the wrong term. Am I like, do I consider myself BIPOC as a white adjacent person? So as I've been going back to prep for the school year, I've noticed that I've saw it pop up within the past 2 years in some literature. But it really wasn't until this summer that mentioned and asked, like, encouraged me to Google, like, what is BIPOC? Because I too was, I got the POC part, but the BI part, I wasn't sure about it. And yeah, so I'm still thinking through how to use, what context to use it in. Is this a replacement word, or does this truly used appropriately within certain contexts by certain people? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about.
I don't know exactly when I first came across it either. I think probably 2-ish, 3-ish years maybe. And I'm so relieved to hear that I wasn't the only one who thought that I meant by POC, right? So I think I probably most directly engaged with it in the past academic year at my oldest school, where there's a new kind of race and equity committee that I'm on, and that's, you know, just kind of where I heard and utilized the term more, I guess. I like that it leaves out certain things. So I like that the question of citizenship or nationality is pushed aside in it. So, right, like I come from a community that's often hyphenized, right? So we're Indian American. And yeah, I like that question of being American is kind of pulled out of it. I also like that it is not minority, right? Because I am not a minority, I am minoritized, right? So I like that. But then as somebody who's not Black or Indigenous, there's always the question in the big term of POC of where do we fit and what's erased and what's highlighted, right? Without wanting to get into oppression Olympics whatsoever, right? But just acknowledging that there's different types of racism, and how do we all like get recognized in that? Some people have interpreted it, I've heard, as like Black and Indigenous people of color versus Black, Indigenous, or, right? So then there's also this question of whether other POC are included too. I also like the idea, though, in some ways of kind of larger group building, which is just necessary in many instances. But I don't necessarily know if the term fosters that type of group building, right? So it's used as this like large umbrella, but does this large umbrella somehow exist underneath it? Probably not.
Yeah, one of the things you said, Nicole, was about who gets to use it, and I'm pretty sure the first time I really paid attention to BIPOC, it was in a white-centered space by white people, or people that I assume to be white, who were using BIPOC. And for me, there's always a little bit of suspicion when white folks use a word to put us in boxes or categories or identities that I didn't know about previous. And so there's always like this suspicion, like, is this like the new politically correct term that white folks are using to make themselves seem like they are, for lack of a better word, woke, without, people of color, Black, Indigenous, and people of color having any say in kind of how the word has been constructed and used. And so I was very suspicious of it when I first encountered it as well. And thinking about like, who has the right to use this word? Is this the new, instead of saying people of color and students of color, are we now saying BIPOC? And do I need to do that? Do I have to have this replacement phrase or word? Is there a responsibility for me to engage in that?
I resonate with that, Angie, because the opportunity of, or the challenge of people of color, or students of color for that matter, is most often times, or many times, we're talking about Black students or Black people. And many white folks folks in general are uncomfortable saying the word Black. So it almost seems like BIPOC was coming out as something that was a little bit closer to saying Black, but I still don't have
all
to say
the way. Yes.
all the way. I'm just saying BIPOC, and like you said, I too first heard it from white spaces, and so I was confused if I was not understanding. Why do you understand but then it's really like the opportunity to say it out loud, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and most people are opting into just the acronym of BIPOC.
Mhm.
It looks better on Instagram posts, I guess.
I was wondering about that, like the permission aspect, who gets to, who doesn't get to, when, why, how. I'm a Spanish teacher, right? So I was trying to think of the equivalent of this in Spanish and across different languages as well. And I can't think of anything that comes remotely close to being kind of trying to be this all-encompassing term. But then I also thought about like that piece that you mentioned, Angie, about almost essentially being a competition, right? Do I now, is this my responsibility now to take this on and kind of leave behind POC, or put it to the side for 3-4 years now before another term comes along? What is the should here? And what is the must here?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I guess that's where I'm at with navigating this new term. New to me, sorry. I shouldn't say new, but new to me.
Yeah. I was just thinking, when you were saying you were trying to think about, are there other similar terms? The first thing that came to mind, and I looked it up to make sure I got it right, but the first thing that came to mind was one that they use in the UK called BAME, which is Black Asian, which in the UK setting means South Asian. So Black, Asian, and other minoritized ethnicities, right? And so it's a similar, like, here's the two plus whatever else is in there, just as that's the only other kind of similar term I can really think of.
Yeah.
That I know of.
Which is interesting because that helps BIPOC, helps people see that BIPOC is contextual. So maybe BIPOC wouldn't work in England as fame does, right? And so, some of the reasons behind naming Black and Indigenous people is that Black and Indigenous people have a history in the United States of slavery, domination, forced migration, genocide, and not that other groups do not have those histories either, but it's different. And so it's really interesting to think about how words mean things and how context matters. And that if we took this word BIPOC to another context, it might make zero sense to folks.
Jennifer Spence used to teach biological versus social constructions of race. She would pull in examples of census from a censi. I don't know. I guess census.
Yeah.
Plural census examples of them from across the world, and like how they're categorized, are categorized, and how what the terminology is. So just as an example of how context is really, really important, right? The categories in the United States are not universal.
Right.
I'm wondering too if it matters in context of like just what are we talking about? Because my understanding BIPOC is intended to center Black and Indigenous folks in relationship to all people of color. That's what I've thought of it being. So I got 2 meetings following this. I've got one to give feedback PLU, and then the second one we were starting to plan our Students of Color retreat. And so the term now has me wondering, and the colleague who's planning the race caucuses is going to have a BIPOC group. And so my head is spinning, like, in this context, are we centering Black and Indigenous folks in a POC group, or were they using that as a replacement term, as opposed to like naming that term's relationship with power in kind of like a larger context? Yeah, so my mind is kind of spinning on this context. It's not just, I don't think it's just like across borders, but also within scenarios within my daily life when I maybe would use it, but maybe not use it. I'd love to hear what you all think about that, because my brain's spinning on it.
So using BIPOC to talk about COVID maybe, and saying that Black and Indigenous people, calling that group out, has a different experience with COVID-19 than people of color and then white people. Like that BIPOC there, I can wrap my head around it and it makes sense if we're thinking about how do we need to connect the term to the context that we're talking about? But for like this, for a racial caucus, one of the things that I also wanted to ask Ami, because she brought it up, is that right? Does it feel so? It's almost like it's not a hyphen anymore. Now it's a comma. And so does that make a difference to how you see yourself as a part of the people of color or non-white collective? Does that make sense?
Right. I mean, I've had issues with the term POC, even though I use it, right? Because of just that, like who's included. And Angie, as you were talking, part of what I'm reflecting on is how all of these terms just reflect like an American society being really bad at dealing with issues of identity. Right? Like, oh, there's all these like brown and black people here, and we'll just like, yeah, like we're not going to deal with that. When people use the term POC, I don't know if they're including me. Like, I mean, coming back to what Nicole said, are they using POC just as a way to not say black?
Yeah.
And sometimes I think people think black and Latinx, but sometimes I don't know if people actually ever included indigenous in POC, right? So I don't know if I'm included in that. When we fill out census forms and it says Asian, right? In the US context, Asian usually means East or Southeast Asian. So I'm like, am I included here? I have no idea. And so it's this weird thing where I don't know what I am, but I know what I am. Like, I don't know what I am according to you and how y'all out there want to categorize me. And it's multifaceted and it's okay that way. But yeah. Sorry, I'm rambling. So I don't know where I would fall. Like if I walked into that caucus and it said by POC, I'd be like, well, I don't want to intrude on people's space. Right? Like maybe I'll go, but I'll be quiet. I'm not mixed race, right? So like I'm not white. I don't know where I'd go. Just to be honest about it. You can take that to your meeting, Nicole.
That's important. Like what you said was that these aren't just words. They're words. But we also have ways that we connect with the words or don't connect with the words, and ways that we identify ourselves that might not fit in these boxes that have been created for us with good intentions or not, right? Like there's recently been a lot, well, recently-ish, kind of questions about the term woman of color and women of color. And again, seeing that as kind of an erasure of just saying, like, you know, say what you mean. Words mean things. Do you mean Black people? Do you mean Latinx women? Do you mean Southeast Asian women? Do you mean Indian women? Like, what do you actually mean when you say this? But also kind of grappling with, well, how do we then create a solidarity, for lack of a better word, for non-white people outside of terms, if that makes sense. So I think a lot of folks see like POC and BIPOC as being like, this is how we build a collective experience or resistance maybe against white supremacy, naming ourselves. This is what it looks like to be non-white. So there's a shared something in that. If we don't have terms like BIPOC and POC, what are other ways for us as, I'm just gonna say folks of color, because we don't know what the right term is yet, folks of color to build that? Because I do think it's important.
So I read something earlier this week that was talking about like how to do kind of anti-racism education with young children, etc. And part of what happens, right, is I think we have to ask a few questions. So I'm not going to answer your question, Angie, but like, who's the term for? What's the purpose of the term, right? And then what's the kind of like underlying intent? Like if the underlying intent is to have some way that you don't have to say Black, or that you can be like, oh, we really acknowledge that our racism is towards like this large group and we're going to include all of you, then the term isn't for me, right? Like in terms of the term is meant to be used by certain people for certain things to help them with, but I don't need to identify as BIPOC. Like that doesn't need to be my identity. Well, let's just put it out there. Like the identity Black did not exist, right? What, like at least in 1400 or whatever it might be. You know, like you go to the African continent and people are like, yeah, maybe, yeah, I work in Nigeria, so I'll just use that as an example. Yeah, I'm Nigerian, but I'm also Hausa. My mother is Kanuri and she's from this village, and right, like, who do these identities matter for? And part of what we have, right, in the United States, thanks to slavery, is people can't trace identities in that way. These are identities that are constructed in a particular point. And what does it take for that identity to have salience? And I think one of the things that we get out of BIPOC, right, is that there are probably experiences and histories that create some solidarities more largely in the Black community, more largely in the Indigenous community, right? Like, are there those types of experiences that unite other people of color? I don't know, right? Like the South Asian experience in the United States is super, super varied.
I've been thinking about to tag on like the SOC, so students of color. And I think maybe that is a shared experience. Like the students are situating in their moment of time as being students within, in our context at PLU, a predominantly white institution. So it doesn't have to be like, when they leave our context, they maybe no longer resonating with that terminology, but in that moment of time, as they're congregating for a variety of reasons, that's their context. And that matters. Because I agree with you, Angie, it is important that there's an opportunity there, particularly at a PWI, to have an opportunity for collaboration or connection, community. It still doesn't negate the nuances within that each racial identity, but yet the larger N can sometimes be a larger voice. Yeah, so that's the context I've been thinking about, is the S, the student, and then what's the things that come after it.
Does that resonate with you in your experience?
I feel good being in a POC box, if that makes sense. I feel equally good being in a BIPOC box if I'm supposed to be there. And so yeah, I guess that's that. That's it. I'm just trying to see how and why there needs to be, or there wants to be, a competition for the two, and if we are to move towards BIPOC and put the POC in the rearview mirror, why and how and when. That's what I'm working through.
As we wrap up, I'm wondering, like, what questions are you still grappling with, or thoughts from this conversation or about BIPOC are you still thinking about, and that you still want to have, like you said, Jake, you still want to continue these conversations about? I'm really thinking about what you said, Nicole, about context and about how students of color, for me, makes absolute sense. But I don't think I would use BIPOC in particular to talk about students of color. That makes sense. Like I think, but I will say Black students, Black male students, Indigenous students, Hawaiian students from Hawaii. Like, I think we need to do a better job of just disaggregating and naming what we need to name. But I'm thinking about why students of color still kind of resonates me, and that's something that I'm not ready to drop and replace. I'm just not.
Yeah.
Why?
No, I've actually been reflecting a lot. Both of what Nicole and Jake said, right? Like the students of color, to me, as Nicole said, makes a lot of sense in the PLU context, right? And like PLU, in my higher education experience, is the first place that there's not some sort of South Asian or Indian students alliance, right? It's the first place where that population is really, really small. And thus, I guess in part, I look for a bigger group, right? And in some ways. And so I wonder if
Okay, can you hear me, son? So everybody, we that was a little snippet of what we have people that are doing now. You know, why are we being held and put in all of these different categories? I don't put myself in the box. I'll say I am a black, well, no, I'm a melanated Capricorn queen. I can't get caught up in BIPOC, FBA, all of that, because I respect everybody, their views, opinions, regardless of race, color, creed, political, or religious background. Why is it our race that, we're FBAs now? We're this. Why is it our race? And when I tell people, like, I don't know where I come from. I know where my parents and great grandparents come from in Mississippi. Okay. And I cannot get caught up in this hype. What this to me, and this is my opinion, y'all keep giving us different names, saying this, but we still didn't get reparations. There's no hate crime bill for people that assault us. I'm looking at this cycle of all of the things that affect Black people / melanated people, people of color. Marvin Gaye sang about it in the 70s. What's going on? People have been talking about police brutality. It's a revolving circle. Hasn't stopped. And this is why I don't get caught up, because the only thing it does when you get caught up in the names Bipoc, I'm a FBA, because now we're fighting over the name instead of what we should be fighting for. So if you people can't see it, I can't make you see it. If you can't see that, why is it our race, y'all keep changing, you adding, and still ain't nothing getting done. Nothing is getting done to help us. We saw what they did with the migrants when they come over here. We saw the money that the migrants received. Illegal? Anybody get money? People that have come over here as illegals. I didn't get a I was able to live anywhere rent free, get money, food, and clothing for so many years. I wasn't here. I mean, oh my God. Testing, testing. Can you hear me now? Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm looking at the box moving. Oh, okay. I don't even know where I stopped off at. Okay, what I was saying was I know my parents come from Mississippi. I know my great grandparents, they were from Mississippi. They tell me on my paternal side, we have Indian in us. Then on my mother's side, they say we have Indian. Well, baby, let me tell you something. I don't want to belong to some of them tribes. Okay? When people say, go look for your tribe, I'm like, huh? My tribe? I don't want to belong to the tribe y'all belong to, because this is not how we are supposed to be living. And again, back to what I was saying. Some of you people will treat these migrants better than you will your own family or your friends. Or some of you right now treat your family, you treat your friends better than your own family. So I'm gonna let the rest of this video play out.
An effort to find community, maybe. Um, but
Hold on. Hold on, everybody. Be patient with me. And like I said, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's the internet, the app. I don't know. Hell, might be Jay-Z. Them I talk about them. Oh boy, who knows? And I don't care. I'm not caught up. I am not caught up on what happened in the past. I'm more concerned about where my people are going now. And until some of y'all wake up and see the division that's created, ask yourself why we've been blacks, colored, Negroes, African Americans. Everybody didn't come from Africa. Everybody didn't come over here on slave ships. So don't when it's like, well, you don't have any any African values. Everybody didn't come from Africa. Everybody didn't come over here on slave ships. And I'm not gonna be caught up in this hype. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. So let's let the rest of this video play out. I'm well, I don't have to understand because I already know that, you know, we are the people that they love to hate, I guess, because I can't understand why change so much. I don't.
as I'm like talking about policy or practice, but I don't know how to yet use it socially because I haven't tried it. And if they have been practicing identifying themselves, says that. I haven't necessarily experienced that within my groups, but I'm just wondering, like, how are these terms going to show back up?
Video, it keeps flaring up.
At PLU, they've shown up in my inbox and startled me, but they haven't yet shown up in conversation.
I'm very much in the same boat as you, Nicole.
Are going to talk about at another time in another place. So make sure you're on the lookout for other opportunities to be able to engage with us and other folks around the word BIPOC. And
We were going over this BIPOC, then looking at, you know, FBI, and I'm telling these, no, no, I don't know where I come from. And I'm so tired of people trying to put us in a box. I need to know why around, and everybody got my race. Why are y'all changing everything with my race of people? Again, let me see. We were Negroes. We were colored. We were black. We were African American. Now we FBA. I can't get down with none of this stuff, and I'm not going to. I'm just making y'all aware because I had never heard of this. And to me, my people is not difference does it matter if I'm a FBA, BIPOC, Negro color, and you never gave me reparations? You got a box my people. You can't make this stuff up. You cannot make this stuff up. Something to keep us divided. Divided. Something to keep us steady going at each other's throats. Because you know, my people, you can't tell nothing. They get drunk, they want to argue with you, or they don't even have to be drunk. They want to argue with you. Well, we got Indian in us, so we should be BIPOC. Well, we, we came over on the slave ships. Our ancestors, they was with slavery, so they should be FBAs. And this is how this mess goes with my people. See, you need to see what's going on, the division, to keep us arguing. We're arguing. People are arguing. For this stuff. And in the category, melanated woman, or if you want to say black, copper tone. I respect everybody. I want to be able to go work a job. I don't want anybody, just respecting me. And for all of those that's saying, oh, people love your people, all right? But content of their character, they should not be judged by the color, but by the content of their character. Where you going, Kathy? Just hold on. Hold on, everybody. Having some technical difficulties. But anyway, the show must go on. So again, I'm just not going to let people put me in a box. I am a woman first. I want to be judged for my character or my skills. My character, how I carry myself, how I treat other people. I don't want to be defined as BIPOC, FBA, or none of that stuff. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Everybody have a great, awesome day. Because there's some sense to why the internet keeps different of black people, melanated people. Me, it's a crock ish. We have more things to be about, to give us every couple of years a new term. A new term. It ain't cool. For me, it's not. That's my opinion. I don't have it with anybody. I tell people in a minute, I ain't tripping. I don't know where I come from. And this is what I tell people. I'm not tripping. What about okay? So again, I'm gonna say this. I don't. I'm concerned about where I'm going now. Hold on, because oh boy, Okay. Okay. Ooh, this internet keeps going in and out. I was going to do this from. This is funny, but like I said, and I don't know. So let me see. Back to this journey. Uh, woo! Bipoc, FBA, Foundational Black America. It is to me something to keep us divided. When I see progress, change my name. What does that? Putting me in the box, how does that help me? How does it help me? Is all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking people. Because again, my opinion is it's due to keep us divided, separated and divided, and arguing. How is everybody doing this fine Tuesday? We've had a lot of high winds. It's been a lot going on lately. A lot going on. And I need y'all to just bear with me. Network, we are discussing BIPOC, foundational Black Americans, trying to curious as to why they keep changing our name, keep putting us into different categories to keep, and I already know it's to keep separated and divided, arguing. We like to argue. Everybody got PhD degrees. Everybody doing their research. Then the people that don't know, then they want to argue with you. You can do your research and they still want to argue with you. And I'm laughing because with, the internet acting up and the high winds. I have a friend of mine, she said, you got a whole lot of time on your hands. I said, I sure do. And that's for me to really dig deep into some of these subjects that I discuss. To do the reading, to educate myself. Even though I don't want people to put me in a box, I still want to know what's going on out there. A lot of people say we shouldn't be concerned about things of this world, but I'm what's going on. And when we tell people that, don't worry about things you can't control. I can't control any of this. I can't control them changing these names. And so that's why I don't get caught up in the hype, because it has not given me any money. Has anybody known thing due to them changing our name? That's all I want to know. That's all. Has anything been changed? Have I gotten any money, any reparations for them changing our name? And this is something that Tariq Rashid started. I have nothing against Tariq. I don't have nothing against them.
Is becoming more severe.
Hold on, y'all. Okay, everybody, hold on.
Couple times.
Yeah.
This is a term that I think I first heard about this term maybe 2 years ago. Do you have a book or an ebook about?
Yeah, I got a book. Yeah, I got a book. Well, I got a book really talking about my experiences. It's called Foundational Black American Race Data.
Yeah. Talk about this term. Where did it come from and what inspired that book?
The term Foundational Black American, I really got that term from Claude Anderson. I'm a big student of Claude Anderson, and I would chop it up with him, not just in my movies, but I would have him on my podcast, and he would talk about how unique Native Black, we use the term Native Black Americans, and he would talk about how unique we are as far as our lineage. We are a unique group, which is true. And I started using the term Native Black American, but sometimes that term would be somewhat confusing. So I said, let's do another term. Let's tighten that term up so that there won't be any confusion. So foundational instead of native, because Black people, we are the founders of this nation, meaning we're the foundation. We built this nation from scratch. So white people couldn't even say that they did that. But
you changed that term?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I came up with the term Foundational Black American based on Native Black American from Claude Anderson.
Wow, that's deep.
Yeah.
It's been taken off. I go on Clubhouse and there's these really interesting debates between foundational Black Americans and Black immigrants from Africa and the Caribbean. And it gets a little nasty sometimes.
It does get nasty, yeah.
And it's sometimes a little offensive. Me being that I have roots, my roots are in the Caribbean, but my roots also go to slavery. In fact, I could trace my roots to the actual name of the slave that is a descendant on my dad's side, named Julian Alonso, who was a runaway slave from an island called Curacao. Not too many people can name the person in their family who was that slave. So I feel like my history and my background is very similar to foundational Black Americans, but there's this divide now. And I think maybe the divide, some people saying the divide is becoming more severe because of you.
No, well, that's a cop-out because that's a projection. Let's be very clear. The divide has always come from the immigrant class, always. We have been the only ones welcoming them in as brothers and sisters and saying, hey, you Black like me, we all Black. The minute many of people from the constructive, so if they go get a PhD, well, I'm a Nigerian American, man. First Ghanaian American, they go out of their way. This woman who's the spokesperson at the White House, they made a big deal about, well, she's the first Haitian American. She's Haitian. She's a Haitian American. They go out of their way when it's constructive. When a motherfucker rob a liquor store and he's Haitian or he's Black. If somebody go rapes 18 women, oh, he's Nigerian, but he's Black. He's Black.
So whose fault is that, though? It's not.
That's theirs and the white people too. That's theirs and the white people too.
I would say it's white media.
Yeah, and them. They do that shit too.
Well, they do it when it's to affirm some success.
Yeah. No, but you black when you want to dump your trash on us. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't want nobody's fucking trash. I don't want nobody's trash. If we're gonna be different when it's positive, be different when it's negative. Don't just be black when it's negative, and then we get the stigma for it. In New York right now, there's a lot of crimes against Asian people. The people just running up, hitting Asian people in the head in New York for no reason. We did the research. Many of these people are immigrants. These are not FBAs doing that. We look at the background of these people. We're seeing a lot of these people are not even FBA, but we get the stigma. So when the stop and frisk comes, I'm getting hemmed up because of what this motherfucker just did. We're saying enough is enough. If we're going to be all one group, let's be all one group. Since you're making it clear that we're different, we're going to be different all across the board. And we have a different, unique lineage, and that's okay. We celebrate everybody's unique lineage. They just had West Indian Day Parade out there in New York. Wonderful thing, celebrate that. Nobody has a problem when everybody wants to celebrate their lineage. We have a lineage. We have a unique lineage here as Foundational Black Americans. We want to celebrate and acknowledge that. That's not divisive. That's what everybody else is doing.
So what is the solution? Because there's no way.
There's not a problem for there to be a problem. You don't need a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. Everybody should just say, hey, look, we celebrate your uniqueness as a foundational Black American. The problem is when we do something constructive, instead of giving us credit for it, other people want to start getting credit for it, and that's the problem.
Okay.
The narrative will just make help do. Now they're saying Italians helped create some goddamn hit. Giving us the credit, every pick off of it, and kind of vulture credit for themselves instead of giving us the credit for it. That's the problem.
Well, that's okay. I was gonna get to the hip hop thing.
Yeah.
I think the hip hop, the history of hip hop conversations is very important because hip hop is not just rapping.
No, it's not.
Africa Bambaataa broke down the elements, and most of us who are hip hop heads follow those elements from breakdancing, graffiti writing, rapping as well.
All from Foundational Black Americans, all of it.
Well,
all created by FBAs.
There's no doubt Puerto Ricans were present in the
present doesn't mean create. Present doesn't mean create. They were present. They were one or two at a couple of parties. They didn't create anything.
Well, how do we define create?
Did something that nobody else was doing.
Okay. When it comes to breakdancing, they
were doing moves that old breakdancers were doing. Crazy Legs and those dudes admitted they were doing old dance moves that the FBA dancers were doing. Puerto Ricans didn't start breaking until the late 70s, early 80s.
But nobody, Crazy Legs invented the windmill.
Variation of something that was already going on. I've seen videos from the 1930s and 40s of Black people doing something that looks just like the windmill. There's all types of footwork movements. There's people like Lil Buck, who was a dancer in the 1940s and 50s, doing floor work, and he inspired A1 B-Boy Sosa, Trixie, some of these people who were the early B-boys in the early 70s. Black people were already doing these moves. They were getting a lot of the moves from James Brown and other people. We've been doing moves that look like breakdancing, and that's where they got it from. So, Puerto Ricans, any of that, because you would see something in Rico. Where would they get it from if they didn't get it from us?
Well, I think hip hop is an American thing, regardless of where you're from.
It's a foundational Black American Very clear.
Also, it was created in the Bronx. Living in the Bronx, New York at the time, this name.
The Puerto Ricans.
Tyreek doing his thing. You know, giving his opinion. Tyreek Rashid is over. You know, he's telling his opinion, which I respect. Hey, young re-airs, what it do? How you doing? How you doing, my rapper from the UK? How you doing? How you feeling? How you living? Yeah, I'm just doing the show. You know, Bipoc. How they're not going to put me in the box. You know, I'm more concerned about the future.
Programs like welfare entitlements have been a part of American culture.
Dehumanizing elements in the welfare system that we are concerned about. We're concerned about a guaranteed annual income. And the other thing I think it is very necessary to say is that everybody's on welfare in this country. And when it comes to black people and poor people, we just call it something else. When it's for white people and rich, we call it subsidies.
It's no secret, fatherless households are more common in the Black community. A survey from the American Consensus Institution revealed that 67% of Black children under 18 in the US live in homes without fathers. This is a stark contrast to white children, as only 24% of them live in fatherless homes. But it wasn't always like that. The Black families survived generations of open racism, widespread poverty, and slavery. They lived through segregation and violence, and strong family bonds used to be the norm.
As of 1962, 2/3 of all Black American children were living with both parents. That declined over the years until only 1/3 were living with both parents in 1995. So it's not the legacy of slavery that destroys the African American family.
Between 1890 and 1950, the marriage rate was much higher. A fraction of Black children lived in homes without their fathers. But everything changed with the expansion of the welfare state. It divided the household dependency on welfare. This kind of reminds me of what President Reagan said.
I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I.
Here is a detailed look at how the welfare state played a role in the dissolving of the family structure over the years. People say that the breakdown of traditional family units, family structures, is a byproduct of Black poverty, not just because there is no man to support the family financially, but also because women tend to earn less than men on average. Of course, the connection between the two is there, but it goes deeper than that. Welfare was a mean little business. It was designed to get people by in a pinch. Public assistance programs, like welfare entitlements, have been a part of American culture since the 1940s. Unfortunately, like in many other aspects of government institutions, Black Americans were left out. In time, Black people could also get financial support, but it wasn't easy. Mothers who applied for checks had to let social workers inspect their homes to see if their conditions were suitable for welfare. These workers also had to make sure no man was living in the house. But even if they qualified for support, the amount they received was meager and not enough to build a stable life. In the early 1960s, welfare was not yet common, even in the most impoverished Black communities. In the decade that followed, the number of Black people on welfare went up by 169%. They further increased by 30% from 1970 to 1975. In 1992, New York City, almost 1 out of every 6 residents was on welfare. A major portion of these households were only around Americans. They made up almost 50% of all welfare recipients by the late 70s. A recent UNICEF report showed that struggle financially, and African American children are nearly 4 times more likely to be in poverty than white children. Though the number of families receiving cash assistance has decreased since 1996, child poverty rates for Black children in the US remain of social welfare policies in the US from the New Deal to the 1996 reforms, and found that these policies have been discriminatory from the start. And a lot of people can confess to that. This led many Black families to fall into cultural and economic ruin. Healthy Black people started relying on government assistance to achieve some level of normalcy. But within the city slums, that normalcy was impossible to get. Black children barely knew their fathers, and most were raised by unemployed and unmarried mothers stuck in a.
Snap your W-2 and file your taxes 100% free. Plus, get your biggest refund. File free now. Roughly 37% of filers qualify. Simple Form 1040 returns only. Click for eligibility.
Stuck in a cycle of poverty and modest paychecks. This marked a significant shift in Black American history. The consequences were severe for the next generation. Let's start with the Social Security Act of 1935. It was introduced during Franklin Roosevelt's administration. It was designed to create the safety net in the country, safeguarding families from losing their income. It was viewed as a significant protections in the future, such as the Affordable Care Act. Had 2 main parts. The first part had social insurance programs that provided financial support to dependents of deceased or incapacitated workers, and Social Security for retired older Americans. The second part comprised means-tested public assistance programs, initially known as Aid to Dependent Children, and later renamed Aid to Families with Dependent Children. In 1962, under the Kennedy administration, ideally, it was believed that as the overall quality of life in the country improved, more families could support themselves without needing financial assistance from the ADC program. Eventually, the ADC program would become unnecessary and gradually phase out on its own. But this posed a major problem for Black Americans. Like any other component of the New Deal, the origins of the Social Security Act were deeply rooted in racism. During the 1930s and 1940s, Black people had to deal with widespread racial discrimination in the workplace. They held low-paying jobs, often paid in cash and off the books. This made them ineligible for social insurance programs. The ADC program was an extension of state-run programs that supported widowed mothers, but mostly benefited white widows. The states decided eligibility and need, and since the separate but equal doctrine was in place, blacks were still excluded from fully participating. Jim Crow laws, equal doctrine, led to a system with different services for whites and blacks. But as we all know by now, they were far from equal. States made efforts to cut down ADC enrollment and costs. They proposed residency requirements to prevent blacks from the South from qualifying for the program. In 1935, there was a hearing on a bill, and the NAACP, an organization that fights for civil rights, expressed their concerns. Southern politicians wanted to exclude agriculture. This exclusion would particularly affect black sharecroppers and cash tenants, who were already struggling to make ends meet. Even though the NAACP was highly against it, the Social Security Act was approved. That's why 65% of African Americans nationwide were not eligible for benefits, and an even larger percentage of these black families in the South were excluded from the program. In the 1950s and 60s, things got even worse for black families. Welfare checks incentivized single mother households, and there was one rule that ruined it all: the man in the house rule. Black families have long been the victims of income inequality and bad government policies. The irony, of course, is that conservatives pushed black mothers to break their families to get welfare. Before 1968, many states and administrative agencies created and enforced the man in the house rule. This rule basically meant that if there is a working or healthy man in the house, the government can't help you. And they would go as far as to send welfare workers to visit the homes without warning to check if a man was present. If they found any evidence whatsoever, families lost their welfare benefits. Over the years, the welfare state started dissolving the family structure, slowly but surely. A man who can't get a decent job and provide a substantial income suddenly believes that his family is better off without him. So, if a man were to lose his job, he literally had to leave the house so his children plus peanut butter, beans, and cheese. On the other hand, if either the woman or the man, or both, were irresponsible, they faced no consequences for their actions. And it was the taxpayers who ended up paying for it. These things aren't exactly designed to keep the marriage intact. They are meant to divide people. The harm done to the children was massive. Many children experienced the hurt from broken families at such a young age. In 1960, just 33% of Black American children didn't live with two parents, but by 1988, that rate went up to 61%. In that time, the proportion of Black children born to single mothers rose from 23% to more than 60%. This is exactly why we can't judge government policies based on their ideals, but based on their results. And these results, well, left a ton of households fatherless. I mean, think about it. What would the result have been if this welfare policy had required the opposite of that both parents live in the same home and care for their children to receive government assistance? The welfare state did what slavery couldn't do. It broke families apart. And broken families fuel poverty. The structure of the family can influence the choices children make. For example, boys raised without their fathers are more likely to drop out of school, get violence, use drugs, or go to jail. Girls are more likely to have a child out of wedlock or engage in sexual activities at a very early age. These children are also more prone to mental health problems, which can affect them as adults. A psychology test detailed in Roy Baumeister and John Tierney's book, Willpower, showed that children from fatherless households, children with fathers present, were more willing to wait for a bigger prize. Experts from the Northwestern Institute for Policy Research challenged that these effects are primarily due to dangerous neighborhoods or poor schools. They found that the direct effect of family structure itself played a more significant role. As marriage rates declined among the poor and working class in the US, the institution of marriage has remained strong among the wealthier population, with similar rates to those from 50 years ago. At the same time, the decrease in marriage among the working class has led to a significant rise in out-of-wedlock births, often to couples who are living together without being married. This happens because people view marriage as an ideal situation, but feel it is unachievable, yet they still want to have children. In the mid-1980s, the rates of fatherless households dramatically increased. Today, just 44% of Black children live with their fathers. Also, a lot more Black children are born outside of marriage. The rates of such cases went up from 24.5% in 1964 to 70.7% by 1994, which remains at a similar level today. Many people blame the expansion of welfare programs for the breakdown of Black families. Since 1935, people have had access to cash welfare, but this welfare was quite modest and not enough to cover any of the living expenses. With Johnson's Great Society, which began in 1964, welfare benefits became much more generous and controlled. When I mean controlled, I mean crazy. The man in the house rule discouraged marriage because it provided welfare assistance to mothers if no man was living in the house. If a mother married an employed man, even one earning the minimum wage, it jeopardized her financial support. These benefits were huge. The Great Society programs offered a way out for low-income Black families. This could be why, in 1964, only 7% of American children were born out of wedlock. Basically, the government urged mothers to keep fathers out of the home for doing so. Shifts in the labor market and deindustrialization greatly impacted job opportunities, especially for low-skilled workers. It hurt both whites and Black people, but Black communities were the most affected. Here's an example. Imagine a city like Detroit, where the manufacturing industry was the top employer, and many Black men held manufacturing jobs. Here, in the 1970s, 56% of Black men were in the manufacturing industry, but by 2000, it dropped to 26%. Over the years, technological advancements and economic shifts created a demand for skilled workers in other sectors, like healthcare or technology. These new jobs required a higher level of education and specialized skills. The problem was the lower level of education among Black men on average. As jobs increasingly required education beyond high school, Black men faced many challenges. This made it harder for them to adapt to the changing job market and find new employment in other industries. White men were better equipped to handle the changing job market. They had higher education and a greater chance of securing well-paid jobs in emerging industries. Then there was the 90s gear change. In the late 1990s, efforts to reform the AFD.
Listen, paying $14.99 a month for a streaming app and $9.99 a month for a music app and $12.99 for a fitness app and
AFDC program took on more. Critics claim that the program encouraged out of across generations. During this time, there was a lot of public concern about the cost of welfare programs. Some people believed that the programs contributed to rising taxes and national debt. It tapped into public fears and created a seriously negative perception of people who received welfare. There were a lot of misconceptions and stereotypes about those who lived in poverty. So, the reform bill that was eventually passed replaced the AFDC with TANF, temporary assistance to needy families. The new bill imposed stricter work requirements, expecting single mothers to find work within 2 years of receiving benefits. There was also a 5-year limit on receiving benefits. To promote traditional family values, teenage mothers didn't receive benefits. But that was not all. If a father were to fall behind on child support payments, they could face threats of imprisonment. The bill restricted the use of federally funded TANF for certain groups of immigrants. There were also eligibility limitations on Medicaid, food stamps, and supplementary Social Security income, SSI. These measures were just too harsh. They made it difficult for families in need to get proper financial support, addressing the root of poverty, and creating new employment opportunities. It just punished those who already struggled financially. Well, modern problems require new solutions. According to Forbes, the economic status of Black Americans is still far behind compared to white people in terms of stock ownership, net worth, income of Black workers in retail, food services, healthcare, and accommodation. And a huge chunk of these workers are doing lower paying services. Exact same job. If you are a Black woman, Black women earned around 58% of what white men earned on average. Similar to Latinas and Native women, Black women face a much more significant pay gap compared to all women. This is because they face both racism and sexism in the workplace. It protects them through disability, retirement, often lack financial resources. is meant to help those who earn low income get benefits. Those who heavily rely on Social Security are older Black people with lower lifetime earnings and fewer pension benefits. For example, in 2017, 35% of married and 58% of unmarried older Black people received 90% or more of their income from Social Security. Despite its importance, Black Americans still benefit less overall from the program because of the ongoing pay disparities and shorter life expectancies. These factors result in lower lifetime earnings and, in turn, reduce the total benefits received from Social Security. In 2005, President George W. Bush wanted to make some changes and planned to privatize the program. But the NAACP responded with a nationwide campaign called SOS, Save Our Social Security, and partnered with the Congressional Black to keep the program safe. It worked. Social Security is still an important support system for countless families. Unfortunately, our country has made very few efforts to reduce the disparities in wealth and income between Black and white households. Despite laws against pay discrimination, Black men earn 83 cents and Black women earn 62 cents for a dollar earned by white men. Also, practices like redlining or housing discrimination have made it nearly impossible for Black families to own homes. These structural barriers create to accumulate wealth and save for retirement. When the pandemic, Social Security became even more critical. Many Black adults lost jobs, and many small businesses were forced to close. The coronavirus made it very difficult to keep up with mortgage or rental payments. The thing is, today,
The first thing you do is run straight to you. It's our anniversary.
Today, more Black Americans are more likely to enter a church to go to a funeral than to celebrate a wedding. Fatherless home rates and high divorce rates are challenging the Black community to the core. Imagine as a young child living in poverty with a single mother in a poor and drug-infested neighborhood. Over the years, you would have witnessed how this would impact your chances of success, like finishing high school and getting a good job. Because of this, many Black children are raised with little expectations or a sense of hope. Now, some might reality. Housing girls. And in that village, fatherless boys are left alone to figure out what it takes to be a man. So, where do they look? To one another. And in many cases, girls' lives too are deeply damaged in fatherless households. Father figure. Young girls can experience psychological and emotional challenges. They can have lower self-esteem and struggle to form healthy relationships with men. Teen pregnancy is a common problem. They can also struggle and poor academic performance. For things to change, we need to acknowledge that the absence of Black men is damaging countless households. To fill this void, it is essential to reunite fathers with their children, but also to the value of family structures. But this is something that will take time. Fair reflection of its economic policies and the nation's long history of race. Black Americans who were already struggling financially. They made things worse, which greatly impacted Black households. The increase in fathers involved in their children, leaving mothers to struggle alone in jobless poverty. This created a new reality for poor Blacks, where work became optional, fathers were rare, and dysfunction became common. The lack of family loyalty and work ethic led to a new oppositional racial outlook among young Black males who often resorted to crime. Now, years later, the impact of the rule can still be felt. A lot of Black children have grown up without a father, and they can easily go astray. The situation is hard for overworked and exhausted single mothers. The more children they had, the harder it was to get a job. I just want to point out the brutal reality that led to such circumstances. The welfare culture discouraged individual responsibility. It pushed people to make hard choices, which damaged their families and put everyone involved in challenging positions. This is a reality that many now have to live with. If you enjoyed this documentary, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We aren't just telling stories, we're changing lives.
So there we have it. Great voice. reason. So again, people, you know, I just showed you a video. Malik Yoba wanted to say he wants to identify as a non-white person. I went into Bipoc and FBA. Like, I don't know where I come from. I'm not going to get caught up. I just showed you how the U.S. government, how they have been doing stuff. I'm looking at history repeat itself. I don't depend on Trump. None of these presidents that have been in office, I have made it by God or my higher power, grace and mercy. When you make the higher power first in your life, you'll be all right. I ain't never gonna starve. I haven't starved and I'm not getting ready to starve now. But when I tell people, I'm looking at history repeat itself. I just showed you that video. Now I'm going to show you another video. You know, all of these name changes, okay? The name changes that we have going on from colored, black, Negroes, African Americans, FBAs, BIPOC, ain't none of that gave us no reparations. Changing our name ain't gave us nothing. Okay? So I have one more video. Hold on. Hey, haven't been showing up in my feed. I don't check you out because you got a great thing going over there.
So-called urban renewal. That was violent. They put the interstate for your community, and they knocked down your business, and they knocked down your apartment, crowded housing, and they essentially locked them in a holding pen. I mean, we talk about housing and education. We talk about neighborhoods as if it's not about racism. To be clear, this thing that we in this country call the ghetto, that was created, and it wasn't created by black people, and it wasn't created by poor people. It was created by folks who were usually not black and definitely not poor as a holding pen for the people they didn't want to live amongst them. So we have to be prepared to call that violence. And violence, even though it does violence, and you don't call it racism, then how are we going to solve that?
A boy last week, who was 16 in San Francisco, told me on television, thank God we got him to talk. Maybe somebody will start to listen. He said, I got no country, I've got no flag. Now he's only 16 years old. And I couldn't say you do. I don't have any evidence to prove that he does. They were tearing down his house because San Francisco is engaging, as most northern cities now are engaged, in something called urban renewal, which means moving the Negroes out. It means Negro removal. That is what it means. And the federal government is an accomplice to this fact. Now, we're talking about human beings. There's not such a thing as a monolithic wall or some abstraction called the Negro problem. These Negro boys and girls who at 16 and 17 don't believe the country means anything that it says, don't feel they have any place here on the basis of the performance of the entire country.
But now, Jim.
No, am I exaggerating?
No, I certainly could not say that you're exaggerating.
That program called Urban Renewal was not urban renewal, it was black removal. And that's why in 1948, Mr. Alioto and others were put in charge of this program called redevelopment. They made all kinds of promises to the blacks that they would be able to come back into this community after the new homes were built, others were rehabilitated. But they didn't keep that promise. The certificates that they were given were not honored. And that's why today we are down to, I repeat, 4.9% of the population.
You feel, however, that we're making progress in this country and worldwide?
No. I will never say that progress is being made. If you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. You pull it all the way out, that's not progress. The progress is healing the wound that the made. They won't even admit the knife is there.
Problem. You guys pull the strings that close schools. You guys draw the boundaries that keep our kids restricted to the ghetto. You guys write up the restrictive covenants that keep us out of houses. So it's up to you to talk to your brothers and your sisters and persuade them that they have a responsibility. We've assumed ours for over 400 years, and we're tired of this kind of stuff now. We're not going to suffer patiently anymore. No more turning the other cheek. No more blessing our enemies. No more praying for those who despitefully use us. We're going to show you that we've learned the lessons you've taught us. We've studied your history, and you did not take over this country by singing "We Shall Overcome." You did not gain control of the world like you have it now by dealing fairly with a man and keeping your word. You're treaty breakers, you're liars, you're thieves, you rape entire continents and races of people. Then you wonder why these very people don't have any confidence or trust in you. Your religion means nothing. Your law is a farce, and we see it every day. You demonstrated it in Alabama. And I can say you because you're part of the whole system. You profit from it. In fact, you make your living from it.
So we have to be prepared to call that violence. If you don't call zoning laws and redlining violence, even though it does violence, and you don't call it racism, then how are we going to solve that?
I just got paid $60,000 for my car crash from using this app on my phone. And I don't know if you could see this, but it's called the Case Connect Compensation Calculator.
So again, Malik, Yoba, I don't know what to tell you. At the end of the day, no matter what you say, you don't want to identify as a black man. I get that. Just non-white. But
Walk around like, I'm not a black man, I'm a non-white man. I'm a non-white woman in America. I decided that I'm no longer a black man, no longer a person of color, BIPOC, none of that shit. What I am is a non-white man. And I think we should all just start calling ourselves non-white. So they're gonna have to figure it out. But they say that shit explicitly. No DEI, no BIPOC, no references to our blackness. So we just all walk around like, I'm not a black man, I'm a non-white man. I'm a non-white woman. I'm a non-white, all of us. Asians, Latinos, just non-white. And let them rebuke that. Let them refute it. Let them come up with something that just says, we don't like all non-whites.
So I hate to warn you, Malik. I hate to be the one to bust your bubble, but when the police pull you over, you will be a black man. I'm sorry for everybody that's under the FBA, the BIPOC and all of that. When they follow you in the store, they're not going to define you by that. They're going to define you as a black person, and they're going to go by what society has taught them, that, all the myths that we're all thieves, crooks, criminals, on welfare. So, and Malik, you got your right, baby. Baby, you got your right to say you don't want to be identified. I get it. Because, I am a melanated woman, black woman. I don't know where I come from. I know where my grandparents come from and my great-grandparents, and that was from Chula, Mississippi. Okay? All blacks didn't come over here on slave ships. I do know that. Everybody didn't come from slaves. And so, again, I'm not worried about where I've been, but where I'm going. And this is April Showers. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you.